Hello, everyone. Just going to take another minute or two to let everybody join, and then we'll get started. All right, so let's get started. I do apologize if you hear some banging during this webinar. There's someone um, building a shed next door and make a little bit of racket, but hopefully you guys won't hear it, just in case. It's not someone knocking at the door or anything. Anyways, my name is Dr. Scott Thompson, I'm Doctor of Occupational Therapy and also the Director of Clinical Services for Saebo Incorporated. And today we're going to be talking about the Saebo-trac Infiniti, one of my favorite tools in my toolbox, not only because I love electrical stimulation, what I can do with the patient, but also on a secondary approach. If I'm focusing on something else, I can be more efficient with my treatments, but also just because of how versatile this piece of equipment is. So, by the way, for some reason there was an issue of uploading the handout for today, so I do apologize that you don't have it to take notes. But I would like to let you know that if you contact me at the email address at clinical support or at the webinar email that you got, it'll notify me and I can send that handout to you. So I do apologize for that. Anyways, so the Saebo-trac Infiniti. Now, a lot of my webinars I start with these details because as a clinician, this research irks me. And one of the reasons that we need to really focus on being efficient and narrowing down what we actually do with our treatment is because of stats like this. So for example, the research on the left says that someone following a stroke in that inpatient phase or those first 2 weeks following their stroke in that acute phase, they only use their affected limb about 38 minutes of a 9-hour day. So we're talking about, during presentations or while we're driving or if we're in academia, whatever it is, we move our arms thousands, if not tens of thousands of times a day. I know when I talk with my hands and I'm very, I use a lot of gestures. I probably in a 30-minute talk, probably move my hands at least 1,000 times. So think about it. Try not moving an arm except for 7% of the day. It's pretty hard. That means lifting, switching, putting deodorant on, any of that kind of stuff. It's essentially that person doesn't use their arm. The research in the middle says that stroke survivors perform, on average, 23 to 32 repetitions per session. So if you think about every session, whether it's outpatient, inpatient, et cetera, 45 minutes to an hour, you're talking about one repetition every 2 minutes. How pitiful is that? And if this is the stats that we're getting as clinicians, wow, we need to do something about it. And then on the right, you have the research that talks about the subacute phase where stroke survivors focus in those same 45-minute to 1 hour sessions, an average of 4 minutes per session on an activity related to arm training, probably, hopefully, task or client-centered based on something that you want, but something functional. But 4 minutes out of a session, they're moving their arm. That's nothing. So that's where I go back to, I love electrical stimulation, because you can combine it with your treatment to, of course, enhance movements. You can train the people to do it passively or actively on their own for home exercise program and more efficient treatment, as well as you can, let's say you're working on shoulder subluxation, you can hook up e-stim on the shoulder and let that treat the muscles and stimulate the muscles and work on cortical plasticity, et cetera, while you're working on another part of the body or a different function. It's pretty awesome. All right. I also wanted to just do a quick overview of all of our products. We actually have added, we will be adding more. I think last year we ended up adding 5 different products to our arsenal, and we're going to continue to do that, because the more that people tell us, hey, these products are really needed, we're going to try to keep supplying them so that we can help the rehab world move forward. So if you look in the upper top right, those are sort of our orthotics. It starts with a Saebo glove that is for grasp and release training and functional training for someone who has mild to no spasticity in their hand. Next, you have the Saebo Flex and the Saebo Reach, which is the above elbow component of the Saebo Flex. That was just put into the Science Museum of London for an extended 25 plus year exhibit with 500 plus years of other medical innovations. So that's a pretty awesome feat in itself. And the reason is because there's nothing else on the market that can do what it does. And it takes that tight spastic hand, or that person resting in flexor synergy, and assist them in grasp and release and functional recovery of the hand and the upper limb for people with anywhere from mild to moderate to severe spasticity. So you've got that clenched hand and you want somebody to be grasping and releasing, whether it's neurological, TBI related, spinal cord, cerebral palsy, etc. This is actually the tool that you would like to look into. Next, we have the Saebo Stretch. That is a dynamic resting hand splint. Essentially, as spasticity increases, the fingers want to curl in that flexor synergy, and this has an energy storing hand plate that allows the fingers to curl, so there's no it's reduced pressure and no resistance, and so we're keeping tissue and joint deformities very, very low, or zero. I never see them. And then when that person finally relaxes or that spasticity decreases, that hand plate pushes their hand back into a comfortable, safe resting position. It has malleable, a malleable thumb rest, as well as a malleable wrist, so that you can go into wrist flexion or wrist extension as a person progresses. I used to increase the wrist extension about every week, about 5 degrees, trying to get more tissue lengthening and help the person get out of that spastic resting position. Next, on the bottom, we have our electrical stimulation line. We have the Saebo-Stim Micro, which is our sensory electrical stimulation unit, something that not a lot of people focus on, but it actually has a lot of research that says that if you rehab would be a heck of a lot better if you actually focused on sensory electrical stimulation as well. Then you have the Saebo-Stim Go, which is our wireless wearable electrical stimulation unit. It's showing you that you can use it on shoulder subluxation. That's what it was originally designed for, but it can also be used on multiple different parts of the body. I tested it on myself from head to toe, and very soon we'll be producing a video showing you how to do the most basic placements for all of that, because the wings are pivotal. Instead of having to know where to put 2 electrodes, etc., the wings actually pivot, and it's just one piece with a controller unit that snaps on and off with magnets. It's an awesome tool, and definitely check it out. Next is the Saebo Mirror Box. If you don't know a lot about mirror therapy, essentially all the research says that if you add this to your home exercise program, it helps with the efficiency of motor recovery, as well as it's an awesome adjunct if someone's bored with their routine, or if you need to switch it up, or they have limited time, etc. Next, we have Saebo Step, that is our out of shoe AFO. One of the biggest benefits of this, not only are you getting rid of those very rigid AFOs, but also allows someone to use whatever type of shoe they want. Next, we have the Saebo MyoTrac Infiniti, or the SMITI, as it's been nicknamed, and that has been the topic of today's webinar. Then we have our Saebo VR, which is an actual ADL, IADL-based virtual reality gaming system. Following that, in the upper left corner, we have the Saebo Rejoice, which is a virtual reality gaming system that focuses on all the grasp, not only upper limb movements, but also the prehension patterns of tip to tip. And essentially, there's an entire controller unit that works on almost every type of prehension pattern. And you use those for repetitive training while the brain's distracted. That you're just playing a game, but you could do it hundreds of times in one little game session. It's pretty awesome. So there's that task-specific repetitive training. And then you have the Saebo Moss, and we also have the Saebo Moss Mini for home use. And those are zero gravity arm supports that really change the recovery and the efficiency of movement. And I tell you, most of the clinics I go to, the Saebo Moss and the Saebo Moss Mini are what people fight over. So, because it's just awesome, and you can use it with anybody that has shoulder weakness of any sorts. You can use it with them. It's amazing. All right. So, talking about the Saebo MyoTrac Infiniti. So, I wanted to put a couple pictures here. The first one on the left is going to be what the actual screen looks like when you start up. Of course, the home screen says start and gives you a couple options of settings, etc. But then these are actually the 4 programs that are included in the Saebo MyoTrac Infiniti. So the first one, the EMG, is a biofeedback program. Oh, didn't know it was timed. I apologize. The second one is electrical stimulation, or STIM. The third one is EMG triggered stimulation, or ETS, on the screen. And then there's the RETS, which is reciprocal EMG triggered program. And that's, I'm sorry, reciprocal EMG triggered stimulation. And that's actually a proprietary electrical stimulation program. And then on the right, that's what a clinician actually looks like. You can see that it's actually a very compact unit compared to the other ones where it's a very large unit that sits on a rolling cart that you got to move everywhere. So that's one of the other benefits of the Saebo MyoTrac Infiniti. So some of the features of the SMITI are that you get 2 channels, and you get high resolution surface electromyography EMG for biofeedback training, and you'll see in just a bit you can have it displayed a few different ways. You can get 2 channels of electrical stimulation to work on one limb or multiple parts of the body at the same time. It includes also combining the biofeedback and the electrical stimulation. You get the EMG triggered stimulation, and then you also get the reciprocal EMG triggered stimulation. So you get 4 different 4 different approaches to electrical stimulation. And then it also has a unique foot drop program that uses the EMG trigger stimulation, and that's also in the EMG triggered, and also the reciprocal EMG triggered program. So the EMG biofeedback program, electromyography is a non-invasive technique for measuring muscle electrical activity during contraction and relaxation. And it's like a real-time feedback on how the muscle is contracting and relaxing. It's not guessing, it's not palpation. And this is so sensitive that it'll actually detect the stuff that's below a client or a clinician's palpation level. So it'll take that trace or even the very minute electrical signal. And it also has auditory and visual feedback for both the clinician and for the client that's using it. You got to remember that biofeedback is a tool and not a treatment. And it helps patients learn new tasks or modify existing motor patterns. And I'll explain it in just a sec, but essentially you work on either the contraction of a muscle or on the relaxation. And that relaxation will probably be of your hypertonic muscles or your spastic muscles. And then you can adjust the thresholds while the person's using it and before and after the session. So what are the benefits of biofeedback? You get increased motor recruitment. the relaxation of the muscle and learned relaxation of the muscle. Reduction in spasticity long term, you get increased timing and coordination abilities, increased motor planning, I forgot to put that on there, and then also you can diagnose muscle contraction. So like I said, when it's below, when it's at trace level or even below, you know, I just remember I play the guitar, so my fingertips aren't sensitive as they used to be because of the calluses. And sometimes when you're palpating, you're like, I think I feel it, but maybe I don't. And I can put this on one of my clients and it will tell me exactly, because it picks up that very sensitive electrical signal. And you can, I mean, it goes from 0 milliamps all the way up to 100, even more. But long story short, you can zoom in and see that exact number that you're actually hitting, and then it'll record it and track it for you. So here's some screenshots for you, and this is what it sort of looks like. On the left is a screenshot of when you click on the EMG button from the initial menu, it'll take you to this menu, and it'll let you say, do you want to select the program? Do you want to use the assessments, or do you want to customize? Now, I'll be honest, I used to think that I needed to customize everything, and then realized that you can get a lot done when you use the pre-programming. So nowadays, for efficiency purposes, I use the pre-programmed stuff. But in this, I think in the biofeedback, there's 24 pre-programmed sessions. So it's not like there's just 1 or 2 or maybe even 10, but there's 24. So that leads me into that leads me into the next part, that in the center, you can see that it hits all the different body parts. So you can select the arm, you can select the neck, you can select the buttocks, the thorax, and the lower extremities. And then it splits it up even further on the right, and you can see that's just like if you selected the one of the upper extremity, it says you want to work on shoulder atrophy, shoulder strength, upper arm. So we're talking probably bicep, triceps, upper arm strength, etc. And it breaks it up into different sections, and that's how we get all of these pre-programmed sessions. Now, I will also say, going back to the left, if you see that assess program, I use that not only to help create thresholds for EMG triggered and RETS programs, but I also use it as a motivation tool. One of the I still think that biofeedback is underutilized, and even in a lot of talks or trainings about using this, I talk to people about how beneficial biofeedback really is. There's research out there, but again, people don't always use it. But the assessment, a great example would be that there was a gentleman who he had implanted electrodes, he had tried all sorts of stuff, and he said, I don't have any muscle movement, I can't do it. I couldn't see anything, I couldn't feel anything. And then I put on the biofeedback setting and did an assessment. And I said, let's see if your muscles are actually working. And wouldn't you believe it? He was like, no. It's untrue. There's nothing there. I don't believe it. He was so unmotivated to really do therapy, just thinking that it was done and over with. And I showed him that he had 10 milliamps or 10 microamp, 10 milliamps. Anyways, it's been a long day already, and it's only 2 o'clock. But in one session of us working together, he went from 10 milliamps to 70 milliamps of triggering. And then a couple of weeks later, he was over 100. And that was not even using it every single day. We were using it every single day for the time that we were together. It essentially, it was that moment that as a clinician that you love, where you see that breakthrough, and there was a light bulb, and there was tears that filled his eyes. And of course, it makes usually the clinician and the family members cry too, but that's that rewarding moment. And I use biofeedback especially for that moment. It helps people become motivated again and believe that they can recover. Now, there's been a few times when I will see that there's really no signal that is being produced. Sometimes, if just shifting the skin a little bit, it picks up a signal. It might be just wasn't specific enough or right over the correct muscle, but also it could be related that maybe that muscle just doesn't have a signal. In spinal cord and traumatic brain injury related injuries. But by shifting it to another area, you can still gain motivation because that person's like, oh, this muscle, I can work on this muscle. Awesome. Let's do that. So the next program on the Saebo-trained Infiniti is electrical stimulation. Some people call it ES, some people call it electrical muscle stimulation or EMS. I get confused with that and emergency services. So nonetheless, we're most as clinicians, we are familiar with ES. It's been used it's used everywhere. I mean, even surgeries use it to help heal wounds or cauterize. There are what else? There's a new one where they're tightening facial muscles with electrical stimulation instead of using Botox, or at least I saw it new. It doesn't mean that it is new, but nonetheless, with electrical stimulation, right? You get electrical currents that artificially generate an action potential that depolarizes a motor neuron, and then those electrical impulses that move through mimic what the typical action potential would be coming from the central nervous system or your brain, and then it causes the muscles to contract. And a lot of times you can get an even, depending on your amplitude or intensity, you can actually get a stronger contraction than you'd ever be able to. And they're actually studying this again in physical fitness and bodybuilding, et cetera. And I've seen a new increase in the interest in electrical stimulation and units being used for bodybuilding recovery and or during therapy, trying to get those maximum contractions. Or not contractures, contractions, I apologize. Impulses are delivered to the targeted muscles via the electrodes, and we know that electrode placement is really important. However, you can shift it around and adjust those pretty easily, widen them to get a deeper signal, put them closer to narrow it out, use smaller electrodes to hit very specific fine targets, etc. And then the motor neuron can be stimulated in multiple different ways. We as clinicians usually use transcutaneous, which is on the surface. Every once in a while, depending on what the state law is, people are doing the dry needling and then doing percutaneous. So they're doing dry needling and then hooking up electrical stimulation to it. And then there's also the implanted electrodes that can do for like, I've seen it for urinary bladder, spleen, liver, kidneys, spinal cord. There's multiple things. I think there's one for the shoulder that I haven't heard great reviews on. One for the knee that I haven't heard great reviews on. So be wary of those if you hear about it or looking into it. But I, again, don't know all the information, so I won't say they don't work. I just haven't heard positive results. Now, the benefits of electrical stimulations are we get muscle re-education. You can get muscle pump contraction, which increases local blood circulation. So, for example, you have that person that has an ice cold hand because they can't volitionally move their hand following a stroke. If you can actually open and close the hand, even if they're not volitionally doing it, it will help with circulation and the muscle contraction, pushing the blood around, and you can help alleviate some of that ice cold feeling and increase the circulation in the local area, also with nutrient support and water diffusion, etc. You also can retard or prevent disuse atrophy. So again, if somebody has an injury, a lot of times we don't use that limb like we should, and a lot of times you'll see non-use or disuse of a limb that people just sort of accept as not good or not functioning correctly. But with electrical stimulation, you can slow that down and also help increase some signals and awareness of that arm. And that goes back to that Saebo-Stim Micro that I said was sensory electrical stimulation as well. That also helps on a different level. You have muscle strengthening, which again, I said, like bodybuilding and physical education and all that is focusing on, again, maintain or increase range of motion. So if your person can only perform shoulder flexion for 15 degrees, you can use electrical stimulation to help the contraction of the deltoids lift the arm and get more range of motion. You can reduce spasticity by the movement, and through repetitive motions and of course continued use of electrical stimulation. And then you also have acute and chronic pain control, which is more of like TENS, but I had a professor that told me that motion is lotion, and it is true. Even when, that's why we use it on muscle soreness or muscle tears. When you have that pain, when you're doing some soft muscle pumping or not hard contractions, but nonetheless, there's different ways to go about helping pain and reducing those pain signals. And then this is what the screens on your electrical stimulation program look like. Once you select the STIM program on the very first menu, then you get what is on the left. So you can either choose one of the pre-programmed electrical stimulation sessions, and there are 22 of them, or you can customize again. Now, I've talked to some people that are in research, and of course they really dial in on every single thing, and does this ramp up and this ramp down time, and does this intensity versus that intensity, wavelength, or whatever. What I found, again, is using those pre-programmed ones is a lot easier and more efficient for day-to-day therapy. But if you need customization, this offers it, as well as it has an onboard memory for storing all of your different customized programs, and you can get a memory card to put in as well. And then again, in the middle, you can see you can select the area and the body parts, and then on the right, it's an example of one of the windows where it says, okay, you clicked on number 1 again for the upper extremity. Do you want to work on circulation, atrophy, strengthening, or subluxation? And then it gives you the pre-programmed the pre-programmed session, and it allows you to pick your intensity levels, and then you go. Now, the next thing, one of my favorite programs in this is combining 2 modalities of biofeedback and electrical stimulation, and it forms a third treatment possibility called EMG triggered stimulation. If you think about it, when you do electrical stimulation, it's usually a time-based triggering or cyclical stimulation, and it's essentially just 10 seconds on, 10 seconds off, 10 seconds on, 10 seconds off. You don't require the person. It essentially, what I'm trying to say is it performs passively. You can have them try to hold contractions and get them involved, but for the most part, it's done passively. Whereas in EMG triggered stimulation, you actually have to have them volitionally participate, because the client generates an EMG signal that triggers the stimulation. So this volitionally based application makes the patient actively participate, which of course we always want. And when someone's actively participating, it seems that outcomes are always much better, correct? Yes. It's also motivating. It's also one of the big tolerance or one of the big barriers to therapy at the very beginning, or even if they're one of the people that are sort of straggling along, is tolerance. And having them actually volitionally do this helps build the muscle memory, helps build tolerance for performing more, and also lets them see that they can produce and train. They essentially can use that body part. When a lot of people say, I can't, whatever. It's essentially a cognitive relearning process, and helps cortical plasticity, especially in stroke recovery or TBIs. But it also helps someone be engaged in their therapy, which again, as a therapist, I think in that psychosocial side, and a lot of people are depressed or unmotivated or don't have a strong support group, et cetera. And when I use EMG trigger stimulation, I encourage them. So we're in a very positive atmosphere, and I encourage them to trigger the muscles and show them they can do it. And I push them beyond what they think they can do, which is what a good coach or a good therapist does. And by the end of it, they might be exhausted, but it's one of those exhaustions where it is a smile on their face from all of the success that they saw themselves doing. And that's one of the great benefits, or at least I think, of using EMG triggered stimulation. So it essentially how does EMG trigger stimulation work? Again, I'm going to reiterate that it's patient controlling the unit. It's not the unit controlling the patient. So you first put the electrodes on, and most of us are used to on one channel of an e-stim, you'll have 2 electrodes. Well, this actually has 3. And the reason is the third one is actually the EMG sensor. So you put that on the muscle group or the muscle area that you want to focus on. Then you set a prescribed threshold that the client must reach during muscle activation. So if I want them to extend their wrist, they must, I don't know, let's say I arbitrary number of 50. I set the threshold to 50 milliamps, and they have to reach and sustain that for a very limited amount of time before they will be rewarded with the stimulation. So it actually works on a reward system, which is pretty awesome. I do that for myself as well. If I need to get something done, I have to set a goal. I just break it down, and then I always have a reward at the end trying to push myself. And this is, I need to hit that threshold. Oh my gosh, push, 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 push. I got it. Boom. Now I have the e-stim. Feels great, getting stronger. So after you push the ETS program on the first menu on the Saebo-trac Infiniti, the window or the picture on the left is what you'll see. You'll see program or custom. Again, for efficiency, I go to the program. Doesn't mean you have to. Every once in a while, I will tweak it because maybe we need a quicker ramp up time, or we need a longer delay for somebody who's exhausted, etc. Next, you get to choose. You get to choose the body part. Again, it's full body. And then on the right, I wanted to show you that I mentioned just on the previous slide that you have to set a predetermined threshold. But what the Saebo-trac Infiniti allows you to do is you don't have to necessarily know what that threshold is. Most of the time, I will do a very quick assessment on the biofeedback program and show and sort of get a roundabout number so that I can set those thresholds, especially if I have someone who I know is not going to give it their all. I will at least try to get that one big effort out of them so I can get some numbers. But you don't have to do that. Again, for efficiency, you can pick that. If you look at the picture on the right, at the very top, there's a checkbox that says thresholds automatically set. So you can click that, and what it'll actually do is, once the person starts working and forming those contractions, it'll calculate what the first 3 of them were, like the average of it, and that will be your threshold. Now, it automatically sets it for you, but that doesn't mean that you can't change it within the program. You can hit little up and down arrows that will actually increase or decrease the threshold, whether someone's way over it and you need to increase it to give them that just right challenge, or you need to decrease it and give it once they're fatiguing, or if they're not giving it their 100%, etc. You can still get that reward. Also in this program, you will set, just like on electrical stimulation, you will set what those levels of electrical stimulation are to see that physiological response. So if you want that wrist at a certain angle, you want to see the movement of the fingers, etc., you will set that as well before you get going. And then that person will be rewarded every time with that same level once they create the volitional muscle contraction and hold it there. And it's not like holding it for seconds and seconds and seconds, but it has to be a very minimal amount. And then the last program is the proprietary one that is called reciprocal EMG triggered stimulation. This is an extremely efficient way to train somebody with spasticity. The REST program, like I said, is a proprietary form of biofeedback triggered electrical stimulation, and is designed specifically to retrain the agonist and antagonist muscles sequentially to produce coordinated functional movements. So one of the biggest problems, of course, when you have spasticity or tone is that spasticity gets in the way. And this program is designed to help volitionally teach them to control that spasticity in order to get the stimulation that they want. And it's ideal for clients suffering from a lot of neurological injuries like a CVA, an MVA, the TBI, SCI, etc., and that lack that ability to deactivate their hypertonic muscles. So and we see it all the time, including some of us. I know after a long day of doing something in the yard, my hands are sort of tight, and I have to shut that kind of stuff off. So it doesn't happen just to neurological injuries. So how does it work? Essentially, if you go back to what research shows works is the contract and relax phenomenon or approach, etc. You want the client to volitionally recruit or activate their hypertonic muscles. Now, a lot of times, former research said, "Oh my gosh, don't do this; it'll make it all worse." But again, we're not doing a full contraction, which is what makes it worse. We're doing a controlled environment where you set that predetermined activation threshold and is measured by that EMG pad. And so when they reach that specific activation threshold, the unit is turned on, ready to go. We're not, again, not a maximal contraction. It is a controlled amount of contraction that will not increase hypertonicity. And then you have the relaxation phase, which is when they volitionally relax or deactivate their hypertonic muscles. And when they attempt to do this, sometimes it takes a little while when they're learning. Other times it can be very quick, depending on what their level of spasticity and education or experience is with this type of volitional training. And at the beginning of using the RETs, you will also not only set the activation threshold, like we talked about with the ETS, but you'll also set a deactivation threshold. So again, they turn the muscles on to a certain level to prepare the unit, and then they have to relax their muscles to a deactivation threshold to be rewarded with the electrical stimulation. So it's ETS at the beginning, but they again have to learn how to shut off or deactivate those hypertonic muscles to get rewarded with the E-stim, which is why I love this, because it volitionally trains them to activate and deactivate the muscles that are pretty much managing how they move. And through this, I see a lot of progress when people are progressing in reducing their spasticity, because they volitionally learn, shut it off, shut it off, shut it off. So we're going to start on this screen at the bottom left. Bottom left is, these are sort of program pictures, but the bottom left is what it looks like when you click on the RETS program in the initial menu of the SMITI. You'll get, again, a program and then customization. And this one, if you go to the next one, the second picture on the left, you can see that there is task training slow, task training fast, foot drop slow, and foot drop fast. And this is actually a proprietary foot drop approach as well, just because of the way that the electrical stimulation is designed in this unit. And on this one, I use a little more of customization, which is why I put the top three pictures. You can adjust how, if you look at the picture on the top left, it says get ready. That's how much time you have to prepare before the first work sequence is initiated, where you ask them to activate and then deactivate their muscles. You can set how long the stimulation time is. You can set how long the rest time is. You can set the ramp up, ramp down, pulse rate, pulse width, activation delay, deactivation delay for one. So there's multiple parameters that you can change on this. And then on the far right, top right, you can see that again, you get to set a predetermined activation and deactivation threshold, but you can also set you can automatically have the threshold set. And on this program, it'll actually recalculate every 30 seconds while this person is doing the program. So unlike the EMG triggered, where it'll take an average of it and sort of set it there and then you adjust it, this one actually adjusts it every 30 seconds so that as a person's progressing, it will change. Essentially does that work for you, because usually when you're performing this type of programming and therapy, you've got both hands on the client and or you're engaging in the environment. So long story short, you're not there to manage it specifically, like on EMG trigger stimulation. However, don't have to always focus on all of the parameters. Again, I use the pre-programmed stuff unless I really have a client who needs a longer ramp up time or a longer rest period, etc. Some people just want to go bang, 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 and get through the sessions and let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. And other people, you know, it's maybe their first couple times doing it and they're whooped after three or four efforts. Then you got to teach them how to, you know, breathe, etc. But I love this program. So here's an example of the rest program for grasp and release. If you look on the picture on the left, you can see that all of the electrodes on the forearm are blue, which means that there's no electrical stimulation being supplied. And if you look, there are 3 electrodes on the flexors of the hand, and then there are 2 electrodes on the extensors. The 3 electrodes, again, are going to be when you have that EMG electrode pad mixed in. So you're reading what is happening in the flexors of the hand, and then you're going to give electrical stimulation to the extensors. So when that person is grasping, as you can see on the left, they're grasping that ball as they squeeze and they turn on the muscles, and then they relax and let go of the ball, which is the picture on the right, which is that release phase. The stimulation over the extensor, which is why the electrode pads are sort of a gold or a yellow color, that is when it is applied. So they're volitionally turning on and shutting off those muscles rather than what I typically see in a lot of therapy is, hey, let's just try to give E-stim directly to those extensors. This is actually teaching the person to fight the hypertonic muscles and learn how to use them at the same time. It's an extremely efficient way to train once you've used it a couple times. Not very hard. It might sound like it, but it's really not that hard to use this. And then we also have the foot drop treatment. So it's essentially like the grasp and release, where at a certain point, the person is going to be contracting and relaxing the muscles that help with plantar flexion. A lot of times those are weak. So as the person is walking, if you look at the progression of the gait of gait here, you've got initial contact, loading response, mid stance, terminal stance. And in that pre-swing phase, they're relaxing those muscles. And then when they relax those muscles that activate the plantar flexors, then they get electrical stimulation to the dorsiflexors, helping them lift their foot and go through initial swing, mid-swing, and then terminal swing before they do initial contact again. It's pretty awesome, and I've got a video here to show you what I mean. So this is someone who is trying to grab the ball all on her own without any electrical stimulation. You can see she has a little bit of finger extensors, but then spasticity takes over. So she grabs, and then when it says relax, she relaxed, and it gave her E-stim to extend the fingers. Here is the same woman trying to walk without any electrical stimulation. You can see the instability in her leg. Now look how much lift she gets, the dorsiflexion from the E-stim, a lot more stability. And again, this is the same person doing it. And they have a much better cadence. And again, this is in the relearning phase, so it might not be normal. And I know all our patients want to be normal immediately, but that is how quickly you can get this type of program to work. You're going to see instantaneous results, which is again why I just love the program, and I love the whole unit, just because it's compact and it has so many options for me. And almost every patient comes, and I don't have can't say I can't use it. So before we complete the webinar today, I wanted to remind people that you can get and this is for the United States. So if we have any international people, you'll have to check with your local dealer to see what it is. But in the United States, if there are therapists who are interested, we'll give you a free 10-day in-clinic demo. So it's a 2-week demo period where we ship it to your clinic, and you get to use it with patients for a 2-week period, and then give us sort of your feedback. And you know, a lot of times people really love this unit and say, hey, can I use a little bit more? Hey, what how much does it cost, etc. And again, cost, because sometimes that comes up at the end of webinars, it's going to be different in every country. So you're going to have to talk to your local representative. But I love, especially when I wasn't the director of clinical services for Saebo, but when I was actually treating clinician, I could get these devices and use them on the clients that need them. And I could see how great they work. And I've worked in multiple different states and in multiple different settings, and there were multiple times where we didn't want to send it back because it worked that well, which is pretty awesome. We also offer free shipping and returns, so don't forget about that. Pretty nice of us, as well as no obligation. We're just letting you know, because once you have it in your hands, you can see exactly the benefit of a lot of the clinical items that we have, sort of like the Saebo, MyoTrac, Infiniti. And then also for any of our patient products, not only in the clinic, but also for anybody who is not a clinician that is on the webinar today, in America, we offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. So you actually get to have, just like the clinicians, we ship the device to your door. You get to try it out for 30 days and see if it is the device or the innovation that you need. And also, what's really great is currently we're making tons of videos explaining how to use our products, tips and tricks, some of the common concerns, etc. So you're going to see more and more videos that make using our products easier in the home, which I love. And then, of course, we have our 100% money back guarantee. So after that 30 days, you really don't think that it's the device for you, we'll, of course, we always ask, so why? Because that's feedback for customer support. But we don't hassle you by any means. We give you 100% refund. We'll send you the return label and you ship it back to us. But a lot of times when people get to use these things and then you contact clinical support and we answer any questions that you have, most of the time people just love the products. And that's part of the reason I became part of the Saebo family. Let me also remind you that next month on Wednesday, February 19th, we at 2 p.m. again, we're going to have an in-depth look at an all-in-one evidence-based treatment solution for upper extremity recovery, and that is our Saebo hand treatment kit. In fact, I just made a video about explaining this on a very short, a brief explanation of what's in this kit. It comes with 7 of our products: the Saebo Flex, the Glove, the Stim Micro, the Saebo Stretch, the Saebo Stim Go, the Saebo Mirror Box, and our Saebo Aviva Stim, which is a real compact pre-programmed electrical unit. And I love this thing. It should be in almost every clinic. I wish it was when I was working, because it treats so many different ailments that come with upper extremity. It's unreal. You got subluxation, tone management, spasticity reduction, all sorts of that stuff. But I want to thank you for joining us. There's a bunch of happy faces and people using our products. Also, just to let you know, that picture of the lady, that's one of our clinicians that really love the Saebo MyoTrac Infiniti. That is actually the bag that it comes in. It comes in a cleanable bag in foam padding with a bunch of different supplies, etc. So it actually comes very nice and compact and organized. So I'll open up the floor to any questions that you may have. By the way, I can't turn on the microphones because there's several people and noise in the background a lot of times. Somebody, the sound will repeat, etc. But you do have the ability on your phone, your iPad, it doesn't have to be an iPad, it could be a tablet of any sort, your computer, or if this is on a generated touchscreen TV or anything like that. All you have to do is click on the little question tab and you can type in a question. I'll give it another minute or two. And your questions also don't have to be based on just the Saebo MyoTrac Infiniti. If you have questions about any of our other products as well, we can. Well, Looks like somebody raised their hand. I hope that person could type in. There's a chat feature or a question feature where you can type in your question. All right. Doesn't seem to be any questions coming in. Well, that's good. Maybe I covered everything about the Saebo-MyoTrac Infiniti. The other thing I want to mention is keep checking our website. We keep updating it with more materials, adding in information, past and current research, as well as we're currently making videos that are helping explain the products easier and more in depth so that you can get a better understanding. And especially nowadays, everybody wants everything at their fingertips. So if there are no questions, then I'm going to let you guys go, but I appreciate you joining us today. And don't forget, if you have any questions, you can contact clinical support at saebo.com. That's saebo.com. Or you can visit us at our website at www.saebo.com for any information on the Saebo-MyoTrac Infiniti or any of our other innovative devices. And you can contact us. That has our phone number, and it has one of those chat features where you can immediately reach one of our area reps, and that is Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as well as you can contact us on various other social media like LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and we will get back to you with answers that way as well. I hope everyone is staying safe and good luck on your recovery or working with your clients. And since I know that almost all of the U.S. is extremely cold right now, please stay warm and safe. And if you're traveling, travel safe as well. And remember, with Saebo, there is no plateau in sight. Y'all have a good day. Oh, I got a question, so I won't sign off. Good job squeezing it in there. It's a common question that we get with electrical stimulation and pacemakers. Can you use electrical stimulation with pacemakers? My suggestion is this. There is research that shows that you can, but it is a very specific research with one type of pacemaker. My suggestion to the world is do not use electrical stimulation with a pacemaker. I talked recently to 3 different companies that produce pacemakers, and their suggestions were all do not use electrical stimulation with a pacemaker, because it can, essentially what happens is when you have a pacemaker, the electrical signal gets fed into your pacemaker, and the pacemaker thinks your heart is producing electrical signal, and therefore it stops working. And if you have a pacemaker, that means your heart needs help keeping pace or producing electrical signals. So the electricity can get in, and you can't ever guarantee that you can be safe or that it won't happen. And sometimes it can short out, it'll interfere with it. And my suggestion as a clinician and someone who just cares, we need to find another alternate than electrical stimulation with pacemakers. So if there aren't any other questions, I hope that y'all have a good day, and thanks for joining me.